Behind the cold steel bars where Luna has been confined after her crimes caught up with her, a nightmare has been unfolding slowly, violently, and with consequences that no one could have predicted. The repeated beatings she endured at the hands of fellow inmates, violence that Luna herself had initially orchestrated as part of her manipulation tactics, have resulted in an outcome that will haunt everyone involved for the rest of their lives. The devastating medical news. When the prison doctor delivered the results of Luna's prenatal examination, the room fell silent. The baby that Luna had been carrying, the child that was supposed to be her ticket to freedom and her connection to the powerful Spencer family, would be born with significant birth defects. The medical professional's voice was clinical, detached, as he explained that the trauma Luna's body had sustained during her incarceration, the multiple assaults, the stress, the inadequate prenatal care, had taken a devastating toll on the developing fetus. Luna sat in the sterile examination room, her hands trembling as she processed the information. The baby she had hoped would bind Will to her forever, the child she believed would soften Bill Spencer's heart and secure her release, would now face a lifetime of challenges. The irony was not lost on her. She had arranged the first beating herself, hoping to gain sympathy and manipulate her way out of prison. But subsequent attacks had been real, vicious, and beyond her control. The genetic counselor explained the extent of the damage, developmental disabilities that would affect the child's quality of life, physical abnormalities that would require extensive medical intervention, and cognitive challenges that would demand lifelong care. Each word felt like another blow to Luna's already fractured psyche. Luna's rage explodes. When Bill Spencer and Will finally arrived at the prison facility after being summoned by medical staff, they were not prepared for what awaited them. Luna, who had spent weeks behind bars planning her next manipulation, had transformed into something far more dangerous, a mother consumed by grief and rage. The moment Bill entered the visiting area, Luna launched into a tirade that echoed through the concrete corridors. Her voice, raw with emotion and fury, cut through the typical prison noise like a knife. "This is your fault," she screamed at Bill, her face contorted with anger and tears streaming down her cheeks. "You left me here to rot. You abandoned me when I needed you most." Luna's accusations were relentless. She reminded Bill of how he had once cared for her, how he had secured her pardon the first time she was imprisoned, how he had seen her as someone worth saving. "You got me out before," she shouted, her voice cracking with emotion. "But this time, you turned your back on me. You let them beat me day after day. You knew what was happening, and you did nothing." The pregnant woman paced the small visiting room like a caged animal, her hands gesturing wildly as she laid out her grievances. "This baby, your grandchild, is going to suffer for the rest of their life because you were too proud, too stubborn to help me. I begged you, Bill. I begged you to get me out of here, and you told me I would rot in this place. Well, congratulations, now your grandchild will pay the price for your cruelty." Bill stood frozen, his characteristic confidence and bravado completely stripped away. The man who had built an empire through sheer force of will, who had always prided himself on protecting his family at any cost, now faced the consequences of a decision he had made in anger and disgust. Will's heartbreak. Beside his father, Will Spencer was experiencing his own private hell. The young man who had been thrust into this impossible situation, discovering he had fathered a child with a woman he had been manipulated by, watching his family torn apart by the scandal, now faced a reality far worse than anything he had imagined. Tears began streaming down Will's face as Luna's words sank in. He had tried to distance himself from the situation, to convince himself that once the baby was born, he could simply walk away and let his parents handle everything. But now, confronted with the knowledge that his child would face lifelong challenges because of circumstances that might have been prevented, the weight of guilt became unbearable. "I didn't want this," Will sobbed, his voice breaking. "I never wanted any of this to happen." His body shook with the force of his crying, and he covered his face with his hands as if trying to hide from the terrible reality before him. The confident young Spencer heir, who had been so sure of his future with Electra Forrester, now found himself drowning in regret and sorrow. Katie Logan, who had accompanied them to the prison, moved to comfort her son, but Will pulled away. He couldn't accept comfort, not when he knew that his child, an innocent life he had helped create, would suffer. "We should have done something," he choked out between sobs. "We should have protected the baby, even if we couldn't stand her. The baby didn't deserve this." Bill's silent guilt. For perhaps the first time in his life, Bill Spencer had no words. The man who always had an answer, always had a plan, stood mute as Luna continued her assault. Her accusations hit their mark because deep down, Bill knew she was right about one thing: he had made a choice. He had chosen to let Luna remain in prison despite knowing the dangers. He had visited her just days earlier and told her in no uncertain terms that she would never see freedom again, that the baby would be taken from her the moment it was born, that he would use all his power and influence to ensure she stayed behind bars forever. Bill's face, usually so animated and expressive, had gone pale and still. His jaw clenched as he listened to Luna's tirade, and those who knew him well would have recognized the signs of internal turmoil. He had made many mistakes in his life, had hurt people, had let his pride and anger guide his decisions. But this was different. This was a child, his grandchild, who would pay for his choices. "I told you that you would rot in here," Bill finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I told you that I would never help you again after what you did to my family. I meant every word." He paused, his hands forming fists at his sides. "But I never wanted this. I never wanted the baby to be hurt." Luna laughed bitterly. "Well, the baby is hurt, Bill. And there's nothing you can do to fix it now. No amount of Spencer money can undo what's been done. This child will live with these disabilities forever, and you'll have to live knowing you could have prevented it." The weight of consequences. As the visit came to an end, Luna was escorted back to her cell, still shouting accusations at Bill and Will. The guards had to practically drag her away as she continued to scream about betrayal, abandonment, and the injustice of her situation. Will collapsed into a chair in the prison's waiting area, his face buried in his hands, his shoulders heaving with sobs. All his life, he had tried to live up to the Spencer name, to make his parents proud, to do the right thing. Now he was faced with an impossible situation, a child he hadn't planned for, conceived under circumstances that made him sick to think about, who would now require constant care and face challenges he couldn't even fully comprehend. Bill placed a heavy hand on his son's shoulder. "Will, listen to me," he started, but his son cut him off. "No, Dad. Don't. Just don't." Will looked up at his father with red, swollen eyes. "Luna's right. We could have done something. We could have gotten her into protective custody, or arranged for better medical care, or something. Instead, we just left her there because we were angry. And now an innocent baby is going to suffer for our anger." Katie wrapped her arms around her son, her own eyes glistening with tears. The Logan woman had always been practical, always been the voice of reason. But even she couldn't find words to make this situation better. They were all trapped in a nightmare of their own making, and there was no easy way out. The Spencer family in crisis. As news of the baby's condition spread through the Spencer family and beyond, the ripples of consequence began to affect everyone. Liam Spencer, who had already been traumatized by Luna's violent actions, felt a complicated mix of emotions. She had shot him, had terrorized his family, but now she was also the victim of a system that had failed to protect an innocent child. Steffi Forrester, who had visited Luna in prison and promised to make it her mission to keep the young woman locked up forever, found herself grappling with unexpected guilt. She had been so focused on justice, so determined to make Luna pay for her crimes, that she hadn't considered the welfare of the unborn child. Even Poppy Nozawa, Luna's estranged mother, was shocked by the news. She had visited her daughter in prison and made sarcastic comments about Luna's situation, but this outcome was beyond anything she had imagined. The question on everyone's mind was the same: could this tragedy have been prevented? If Bill had responded differently to Luna's pleas, if he had arranged for better protection or medical care despite his anger toward her, would the baby have been spared? The answers were unknowable, but the guilt was very real. Luna's transformation. In the days following the devastating diagnosis, Luna underwent a transformation. The manipulative young woman who had schemed and plotted her way through Los Angeles society, who had killed and lied without remorse, now channeled all her energy into rage and blame. She refused to accept any responsibility for her situation, instead focusing all her anger on Bill Spencer. In her mind, everything that had gone wrong was his fault. If he had loved her enough, cared for her enough, protected her enough, none of this would have happened. The fact that she had committed crimes that put her in prison in the first place seemed irrelevant to her. Prison staff reported that Luna spent hours writing letters to Bill, each one more vitriolic than the last. She detailed every beating she had endured, every moment of fear, every inadequacy in her prenatal care. She made sure he knew, in excruciating detail, exactly what his decision to abandon her had cost. Some of these letters found their way to Will, and each one drove the knife of guilt deeper into the young man's heart. He began having nightmares about a child he had never met, imagining the struggles and challenges his son or daughter would face. His relationship with Electra Forrester became strained as he wrestled with the reality of his impending fatherhood and the tragedy surrounding it. The prison system's failures. As the Spencer family grappled with their personal crisis, larger questions began to emerge about the prison system itself. How had Luna, a pregnant inmate, been subjected to repeated violence without adequate intervention? Why hadn't medical staff recognized the danger to her pregnancy sooner? What protections were in place for vulnerable inmates, and why had they failed so spectacularly? Legal experts began weighing in, suggesting that the Spencer family might have grounds for a lawsuit against the correctional facility. After all, regardless of Luna's crimes, she had rights as a pregnant inmate, and the system had a duty to protect both her and her unborn child. The fact that she had suffered multiple assaults resulting in birth defects for her baby suggested a systemic failure that went beyond personal vendettas. But such legal remedies offered cold comfort. No lawsuit, no settlement, no policy change could undo the damage that had already been done to an innocent child. Looking forward to an uncertain future. As Luna's pregnancy continued, everyone involved faced an uncertain future. The baby would need extensive medical care from the moment of birth. Specialists would need to be consulted, treatments planned, accommodations made. The Spencer family, for all their wealth and resources, found themselves facing challenges that money alone couldn't solve. Bill Spencer, who had always believed that power and influence could fix any problem, discovered the limits of his control. He couldn't undo the past, couldn't reverse the damage, couldn't make things right with a phone call or a check. For a man who had spent his life bending the world to his will, this helplessness was perhaps the cruelest punishment of all. Will continued to struggle with his emotions, oscillating between grief, anger, and determination. Despite everything, he knew that he would have to step up and be a father to this child. The baby hadn't asked to be conceived, hadn't asked for the circumstances of its birth, and certainly hadn't deserved to be hurt. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Will knew he couldn't abandon his son or daughter. Katie and Bill, putting aside their own complicated relationship, united in their commitment to ensure the baby received the best possible care. They consulted with specialists, researched treatment options, and prepared the Spencer mansion to accommodate a child with special needs. In their own way, they were trying to atone for their mistakes. And Luna, still behind bars, still consumed with anger and blame, waited for the day when she would give birth to a child who would forever bear the scars of the violence and neglect she had endured. Whether she would be allowed to see the baby after delivery, whether she would maintain any parental rights, whether she would ever truly understand her own role in this tragedy, these questions remained unanswered. The Spencer family crisis had reached a new depth, and the reverberations would be felt for years to come. In the end, Luna's fury at Bill for failing to rescue her from prison had exposed a painful truth. Sometimes, the consequences of our actions extend far beyond ourselves, touching the lives of the most innocent and vulnerable among us. And sometimes, no amount of tears, regret, or recrimination can change what has already been done. Next, we will learn about the brewing storm in Los Angeles as Brooke Logan and her daughter Hope Logan gear up to target the unstable Sheila Carter, potentially unraveling the fragile marriage between Sheila and Deacon Sharp. In the glittering yet treacherous world of Forrester Creations and beyond, family loyalties often clash with hidden agendas, and right now, Brooke and Hope are channeling their protective instincts toward Deacon, who has inexplicably tied himself to the notorious Sheila. The Logans have long viewed Sheila as a ticking time bomb, her history of manipulation and violence casting a dark shadow over anyone she touches, especially someone as redeemable as Deacon. With recent tensions pulling Deacon and Sheila slightly apart, perhaps sparked by a heated argument over her secretive past, they sense a rare opening to intervene and steer him back to safer emotional ground. Brooke, ever the strategist in matters of the heart, sees this as more than just family concern. It's a chance to safeguard Deacon's future from a woman whose love often comes laced with danger. Hope, drawing from her own experiences with turbulent relationships, worries that Sheila's influence could drag her father into yet another scandal, echoing the chaotic cycles that have plagued the Sharp family for years. Hope Logan, in particular, has been vocal in her desire for her father to find stability, imagining a partner who brings warmth and normalcy rather than endless drama and moral ambiguity. Teaming up with her half-brother R.J. Forrester, affectionately called Deke by close family, Hope envisions Deacon settling down with someone grounded, free from the bizarre traits that define Sheila, like her infamous physical quirks or her ethical voids that have led to countless betrayals. Their shared frustration has bubbled under the surface during family gatherings at Il Giardino, where polite smiles hide deeper disapproval, but now, with Sheila's vulnerabilities exposed, they might finally voice their concerns more forcefully. RJ, who has always idolized his father's resilience, confides in Hope about late-night talks where Deacon admits doubts about his impulsive marriage, hinting at regrets tied to Sheila's unpredictable moods. This sibling alliance could prove pivotal, as they plot subtle ways to highlight Sheila's flaws, perhaps by sharing old stories of her destructive escapades that Deacon has conveniently overlooked in his quest for companionship. Meanwhile, across town, Deacon Sharp and Taylor Hayes are forging an unexpected bond through their ongoing therapy sessions, a development that's not only healing old wounds but also igniting sparks of genuine connection that threaten to upend the current dynamics. These sessions, initially meant to address Deacon's marital strife and Taylor's lingering heartaches, have evolved into intimate exchanges where they unpack years of shared pain from the Forrester orbit, laughing over past absurdities and supporting each other's growth. Taylor, with her psychiatric expertise, gently guides Deacon toward self-reflection, while he offers her a refreshing honesty absent in her more complicated ties to Ridge Forrester. As they grow closer, perhaps sharing a lingering glance after a particularly emotional breakthrough, Sheila's jealousy simmers to the surface, manifesting in subtle surveillance that echoes her darker days. Brooke and Hope, attuned to the Forresters' grapevine, are quick to notice these shifts, viewing Taylor as a far superior match who could provide Deacon with the intellectual and emotional depth he craves. They might even orchestrate casual encounters, like inviting Taylor to a family dinner under the guise of therapy follow-up, to nurture this budding chemistry and expose Sheila's insecurities. The potential for Brooke and Hope to actively separate Deacon from Sheila hinges on exploiting these therapeutic alliances, turning what started as professional help into a romantic lifeline for Deacon. Sheila's envy toward Taylor has already led to awkward confrontations at the clinic, where her probing questions reveal a paranoia that's pushing Deacon away rather than closer. Brooke, sensing an ally in Taylor's own frustrations with Ridge's indecision, could whisper encouragements during a chance meeting at the cafe, suggesting that Deacon's steadfastness might be the stability Taylor deserves after years of heartbreak. Hope, leveraging her design work at Forrester, might drop hints to RJ about playing matchmaker, arranging a coincidental overlap in their schedules that forces more one-on-one time. If successful, this maneuver would not only isolate Sheila but also reposition Taylor's affections away from the Logan Forrester drama, creating a ripple effect that stabilizes multiple family fronts. Imagine the tension at the next group therapy extension, where unspoken attractions bubble up, forcing Sheila to confront her fading grip on Deacon's heart. As the knives sharpen in this familial feud, Hope and RJ are poised to unleash a barrage of criticism against Sheila, moving beyond their restrained politeness to outright condemnation that could sway Deacon's loyalties. Up until now, they've navigated interactions with measured disapproval, nodding through Sheila's attempts at charm while exchanging knowing glances, but the strain of her presence at holiday events or business meetings has worn thin. RJ might recount a fabricated yet plausible tale of Sheila's interference in his early modeling days, amplifying her meddlesome nature to plant seeds of doubt in Deacon's mind. Hope, with her empathetic demeanor, could frame it as concern for Deacon's well-being, citing how Sheila's past obsessions have ruined lives, from Steffi's near-fatal encounters to Finn's fractured family ties. This bad-mouthing campaign would unfold organically, perhaps over a father-daughter lunch where Hope lists Sheila's red flags like a checklist, urging Deacon to prioritize his children's peace over a turbulent romance. The emotional weight of these conversations could tip the scales, especially if Deacon recalls his own pre-Sheila life of relative calm. Brooke Logan's role in this unfolding plot adds a layer of calculated intrigue, as she contemplates nudging Taylor Hayes directly toward Deacon to divert her from pursuing Ridge Forrester once more. Brooke has spent decades fending off Taylor's advances on her husband, viewing her as the eternal rival whose return always spells trouble for the Bridge Union, and now she sees a golden opportunity to redirect that energy. During a private chat at the Forrester mansion, Brooke might reminisce about Taylor's strengths, her compassion, her professional poise, and subtly link them to Deacon's needs, painting a picture of a partnership that could heal them both. This isn't mere altruism, it's a defensive play to keep Taylor occupied with someone outside the immediate circle, preventing another love triangle that could shatter Brooke's hard-won happiness with Ridge. Envision Brooke hosting a casual spa day for the women, where she steers the conversation toward Deacon's positive changes in therapy, encouraging Taylor to consider the possibilities of a fresh start. By aligning their interests against Sheila, Brooke ensures her own domestic bliss while aiding her ex's quest for normalcy. A collaborative strike from Hope and Brooke together represents the most potent threat to Sheila's hold on Deacon, uniting their maternal instincts in a bid to restore family harmony and Deacon's sense of self. Both women share a profound stake in Deacon's joy, having witnessed his lows from afar and believing that Sheila's toxic aura only breeds misery, from her explosive temper to her web of deceptions. They might convene in secret at Brooke's beach house, brainstorming ways to expose Sheila's underbelly, perhaps by anonymously tipping off Deacon about her latest covert maneuvers. Hope's youthful passion complements Brooke's seasoned cunning, creating a dynamic duo that could subtly sabotage date nights or amplify Taylor's appeal through shared social media posts. Their joint effort would underscore the Logans' unbreakable bond, turning personal vendettas into a cohesive strategy that prioritizes Deacon's long-term fulfillment over short-term passion. It's easy to feel a twinge of sympathy for Sheila Carter amid her apparent transformation, her efforts to reinvent herself as a devoted wife drawing from a well of vulnerability shaped by decades of rejection and isolation. Yet, cracks in this facade are widening, revealing the cunning manipulator beneath as she resorts to semi-stalking Taylor during evening walks near the therapy center, her watchful eyes betraying an obsession that's all too familiar. More alarmingly, Sheila's lies about Luna Nozawa's survival have unraveled in private confessions, exposing a calculated deception that endangered lives and eroded trust within the extended circle. Her non-consensual encounter with Bill Spencer, leading to an unplanned pregnancy, stands as a stark reminder of her boundary-crossing impulses, a secret Deacon is only beginning to glimpse through fragmented whispers from allies. Layered atop this is the revelation that Sheila orchestrated Remy's employment at Spencer Publications, a move that inadvertently facilitated his meeting with Luna and entangled more innocents in her schemes, details that paint her as a puppet master whose helpfulness always serves hidden motives. Deacon now faces a mountain of unspoken baggage, from fabricated alibis to suppressed vendettas, prompting questions about whether severing ties would free him to rebuild without the constant specter of scandal. Deacon's sudden immersion in Sheila's convoluted history raises profound doubts about the viability of their union, as each uncovered layer chips away at the illusion of redemption she clings to. Imagine him poring over old news clippings in his office, piecing together the full extent of her manipulations, from poisoning rivalries to faking deaths for sympathy. This unpacking process could culminate in a soul-searching moment alone at the bar, where he weighs the thrill of their passion against the peril it invites, ultimately leaning toward a cleaner slate. Without Sheila's anchor, Deacon might rediscover his entrepreneurial spirit, focusing on Il Giardino's expansion while nurturing ties with his children, unburdened by her endless crises. What unfolds next on The Bold and the Beautiful promises a cascade of high-stakes confrontations and heartfelt revelations, as these alliances test the limits of loyalty and love in the City of Angels. This scenario crafts a win-win for Brooke, RJ, and Hope. Dismantling Deacon and Sheila's marriage eradicates her corrosive influence from their lives, purging the family of her disruptive energy that has already strained holidays and business ventures. Simultaneously, guiding Deacon toward Taylor not only secures his chance at authentic happiness, rooted in mutual respect and shared history, but also neutralizes Taylor's perennial pull on Ridge, fortifying the bridge foundation against future upheavals. Picture the triumphant family brunch where Deacon announces a separation, crediting his growth with Taylor, while Sheila slinks away to plot her next move from the shadows. So, what are your thoughts on this delicious dose of soapy interference, favoring a take-on romance over the volatile she-con pairing? Could it reshape the canvas of B&B forever? Drop your predictions in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more exclusive spoilers.